Oh, sorry. That's for a Democrat show.
Let me know when you're ready.
Was an extremely great conservative commentator. We're tearing it up on Wednesday night. This is awesome. This
will allow me to retort.
Well, this is Jersey Joe for the Reaver of Common Sense show. I'm on shrmedia.com.
Actually, I just totally screwed up. This show contains language that some viewers may find offensive. Listener discretion is advised. And now on to the show. And welcome to the Reaver of Common Sense. I'm your host, Jersey Joe, and I'm here to make sense out of the senseless right here on SHR Media, conservative media done right. Now we got a special guest today. Let's bring him on in.
Hi. I'm just kidding. How's it going, man?
Pretty good. How about you?
Oh,
well,
you know.
Yeah.
Here I am.
I don't have my PA, so I had to order Dunkin' Donuts.
Oh, my goodness. Your life is so difficult.
I know.
It must be rough. I don't know however you're going to survive.
Let's see, a week by myself. Hookers and booze. Hookers and booze.
Yeah, you don't have the budget for that.
All right. Cheap hookers. Cheap booze. So what's going on there? Anything?
Nothing, buddy. How are you? Thank you for having me.
You know, anytime. I don't mind. It's always fun. It breaks up the monotony, but I also want to bring out week from today is December 2nd. I will have a special guest, and I'm going to butcher his last name, and I know it, and I apologize.
Oh, I'm waiting for it.
Joel Soul.
I don't think
Joe Soul.
I think you did all right.
He is a vet and an author. He's written a book about his addiction and recovery and his time in the service. And he'll be here on December 2nd at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And I will also have another special guest. The great BZ will be co-hosting with me.
That's awesome.
Yeah. To be honest, and I'm not trying to knock myself or be negative, I felt that I think BZ will add a next level to the interview.
I agree with you. I think BZ is always a great interview. The BZ is one of those guys when he's on your show, he's easy, right? Because you don't even have to try. You just wind him up and let him go, and he knows what he's doing. It's seriously awesome. So you'll do well.
Yeah, I'm hoping. So I wanted to do this guy justice, and hopefully maybe send him around send
him around the horn, so to speak.
Yeah, send him around SHR show stable and get him more exposure.
I mean, stories like that I think are amazing and need to be shared, and to highlight what our vets have gone through and the struggles that they've had and the fight that they've had, both internally and externally, cannot be understated or underappreciated. So I think it's going to be awesome.
Well, you and myself, just not too long ago, interviewed Chris Pronto, Thompson, and some of the stories he was telling us of what went on in his life after. As everybody knows, I took a break. Sean took a break. Tonto did the same thing. He had to step away, and there was a lot of stuff going on in his life, and he was very forward and out front about it, and it floored me because you hear about it, but when it's someone you don't think about it.
Well, when you have a personal connection to somebody and they're more than just an interview, or they're more than just I don't want to say celebrity because Chris would get mad, but when they're more than just a personality, I guess is a better way to put it, right? Chris is a friend of ours. Chris is a human that we have a personal connection with. And when you heard, I knew he'd been through a lot, but to hear him kind of share the experience and how it was for him was it was tough. That was tough. I hate to hear that for him because, like I said during the interview, and he's one of the nicest human beings you can meet. He really is. He's great. So you hate to hear it. So I'm looking forward to that interview. I think it'll be great.
Yeah. So you missed something on your show that you wanted to talk about. You gotta give the fat man a chance to talk about it since you missed the opportunity. One fat man to another.
Thanksgiving. Yeah, I was well, one of my favorite parts of Thanksgiving, on top of the food and everything else, is the WKRP turkey drop. It's the funniest damn thing. Anyone who's never seen it, you can just Google WKRP turkey drop, right? It's from the WKRP show in the 80s or in the late 70s, actually. I think it started in 78, 79. Absolutely hysterical. But one of the things that I've said for a long time that Thanksgiving is one of the most underrated holiday. It's become a kickoff to Christmas versus a standalone on its own holiday. And I know that businesses have caused that, but one of the things that Thanksgiving, for me, you look at our heritage, when the Pilgrims came to America and it started what eventually became the Revolution, eventually became the country. So there's that aspect of it. Growing up in Boston, you'd go down to the Plymouth Plantation down on the Cape or in Plymouth, and you do a visit every year when you're growing up in school. You got an appreciation for what they had to go through. But it was also growing up one of those times that the whole family was always together. When I grew up, I had 4 or 3 siblings, 4 including me. My parents, we were all various ages. We all had various activities. And then there was my in-law, brother-in-laws, both of them now. And we just never got a lot of time as a unit. So Thanksgiving, because even Thanksgiving occasionally we'd go out after, but Christmas, you do it in the morning and then you go to all the relatives' house. We always did the rounds of relatives, which is great to see all of them, but it was more of a chaotic day. With Thanksgiving, we actually all hung out together and we all spent time together. And to me, especially now, I don't think I knew how to appreciate it then as much. As you get older and you lament a little bit and you start appreciate more. Looking back, I'm like, man, that was something that, I'd give a lot to be able to go back and have one more Thanksgiving like that, before my dad passed and all that stuff. Because it was fun and it was really fun. And it was just something that it was the start of the holiday seasons, but it was also, it was just family time, and it was easy family time for the most part. And we had some amazing Thanksgiving stories. I don't know if you remember, and I don't know exactly what year it was. It was the late 80s, early 90s. There was the poisoned turkeys, or they weren't poisoned. They were, they had to get recalled. They recalled a ton of turkeys one year, and it came out like the day before Thanksgiving that all these turkeys were recalled for whatever listeria or whatever it was. I don't remember what it was. But of course, we had bought one of the turkeys that you weren't supposed to eat. I can remember there was like this mad rush. My brother-in-laws, my sisters, my brother, we're all like trying to go to stores and find turkeys. There were no turkeys, whatever. So we ended up having lasagna right on Thanksgiving. And that was a joke that we, of course we carried for years. And I remember as we got older, my sister, the first time she hosted with her husband at their house, it was in a big apartment building. She burnt the rolls, and it was a modern apartment building. So when one smoke alarm went off, they all went off.
Oh,
and they also summoned the fire department. So we had the fire department over for Thanksgiving, right? And of course, the running joke, and I mean, that was probably 93. Here it is almost 30 years later, and we're still like, hey, Kel, did you check the rolls? Did you get the rolls out of the oven like that? All the time. So it's stuff like that, I think makes Thanksgiving important. It makes you appreciate not only the country's heritage, but your own family's heritage. And, as you got older and you, like me, working in public safety, you started working every single holiday for the first couple of years. So you weren't able to appreciate that as much. And I can remember how many times I'd work the late shift or graveyard, as some people call it, get out at 7 a.m., drive to my sister's house an hour away, sleep for a few hours in the basement while everything was, and then be able to spend time. But it still was just like chaotic.
EMS wise, Thanksgiving is a very, very, very busy day.
Oh yeah. Oh, yeah.
And
Well,
that's
and
not doom and gloom. It's actually one of the highest days for cardiac arrest.
Well, and then working in public safety, and a lot of people don't know this, is post Thanksgiving going through Christmas is both domestic violence season
Mm-hmm.
and suicide season.
And we're not supposed to say those words. We might
unaliving.
Yeah, fuck that.
Unaliving season. But and you start to see a lot of it. So you also, if you've worked in those times, and I can remember when I was working the projects, we saw it quite a bit, and I'm sure you did as well. You almost get a weird apprehension of the holidays every once in a while, because you can remember, anyone who's ever worked public safety, you have those calls that stick with you, and you have those calls that you can remember, and good and bad. And unfortunately, this time of year, for folks in public safety, where you really have to kind of take account of yourself a little bit, take account what have you seen, and try to deal with it before it catches you. And I say that, and you know why I won't get into it too much, but very recently I know of somebody who it caught them, and it's just tragic. It's sad and it's tragic and it's hard. So, it's
a lot of people.
Yeah. And, it's something that, I remind everybody, and, and people who work in the hospitals as well. And there's other fields. I'm not just trying to say it's only public safety, because they do see it as well. But you have to make sure you're dealing with it properly, and you're understanding, it's one of those seasons. I always tell everybody, the older I get, especially, is, if you're having a hard time, you got to reach out and handle it somehow. And I don't care what you're having a hard time about, and I don't care what your history is. You got to reach out and handle it. It's not
everything affects everybody differently.
Yeah. And it's not something you want to get ahead. You want something to get ahead of you.
No.
Because it gets harder, and the deeper into the holiday seasons, the harder it gets. So now that we started on a major downer,
it's something that needs to be talked about more in the open, instead of hiding it like it's some dark shadow. Dark shadows are what cause fears. You bring it out to the light, you sanitize it, make it out better.
Well, and
not the action, but allowing people to talk about it freely without any negative connotation is the answer.
Yeah, it's there was a taboo back in the day when it came to mental health, especially in public safety, and especially with males. That it was never spoken about really at all, and it wasn't until post 9/11, and we started learning about PTSD, because you remember, like, the Vietnam veterans, they ignored all their PTSD, right? Those guys, unfortunately, were kind of cast off. Post 9/11, when we first started having folks come back from Afghanistan and Iraq, they started to take it seriously. And then eventually it worked its way down to public safety, because even post 9/11, the PTSD with public safety wasn't taken seriously. It was the soldiers, and rightfully so, and the airmen, and all the service folks, rightfully so. And it wasn't until those two paths started to cross, and you started seeing law enforcement officers with the military experience showing signs of PTSD, to finally somebody say, hey, maybe we should look at other people too, firefighters, EMS, cops, doctors, nurses. Like, there could be some other people who have PTSD.
I can tell you right now, from experience, this is going back years. I think it was a 3-month period. I lost 11, 12 kids aged 17 to 25 in multiple accidents. One night it was 4 kids in a car. First 2 we pulled out. They were just put to the side. The next one, we kind of knew, but he got sent to the trauma center. and my patient, who was literally folded up like an accordion inside the car. I mean, his femurs was snapped, his tib fib were snapped on both legs.
Mm-hmm.
After a while, I had a young guy changing a tire on the side of the highway, and 2 kids high on weed, not paying attention to the rain, hit him, sent him flying like 20 feet. Literally, his sneakers were where he was changing the tire. 2 kids on a motorcycle out joyriding. They helped a friend of theirs move, and they didn't know the roads. Slid, slammed into a tree. The one kid was talking when I first got on scene. Next thing we know, he's in cardiac arrest.
Yep.
And it just, after a while, it built up on me.
Yeah.
And I started knowing my drinking went from, I drank a lot back then, but it really went into overdrive.
Mm-hmm. For all the wrong reasons.
Pissed for the wrong reasons.
Mm-hmm.
And it took finally talking to some people. I should have went for professional help. I didn't, but I just talked to other people in the field and just, otherwise would have got worse.
I was fortunate that I had guys that I regularly hung out with. And as well as I do, you don't talk about the one thing that went wrong, right? You just vent about your day, but you're venting with somebody who gets it.
Yeah.
So it is a release valve.
My EMS partner, it was,
yeah, no, it's just
shit day. Let's head to the bar. Let's go talk. And for us talking is when we sit there punching each other at the bar.
Of course, you're just giving each other a hard time, but it's getting that release valve out, right? It's everyone needs to find a way.
And we were just sitting there punching each other in the arm. And
yeah, just being.
One time we had a bouncer come out. He was like, "You guys are out of here." The bartender's like, "Why? They're having a conversation. Leave them alone."
Yeah, they're just being jackasses. No, and I can remember, sometimes it's like it's weird which ones will get you. I can recall an incident where it was an older guy on a ladder. It was icy out. It was early mid-December over a basement stairwell, and he was trying to put up Christmas decorations. Slipped, fell. That was it. And I can remember he was all by himself. There was nobody in the house. We had to dig to find phone numbers to make the call to notify family. And I remember that one really got to me because it was just this poor old timer all by himself, and he was still trying to have the holiday spirit. He was still trying to do something positive when he didn't have to, whatever. So it's amazing what little ones kind of dig into you and which ones you don't even realize until much later. Sometimes it comes out where all of a sudden you get that flash memory and you're like, well, I was just having dinner. What the hell, man? Why did that one go through my head?
The one that really sticks with me is we had a 17-year-old kid just got his license. Literally just got his license. His parents paid to soup up his car. First night out drag racing. He hit a telephone pole so hard that at his jawline, that's where his head snapped and fell outside the car. His hand was still on the steering wheel and still on the shifter. When we walked up, his girlfriend sitting next to him, covered in blood, walked out with a broken arm.
We're getting so many people listening now, right? They're all staying for the gruesome.
But those are the type of stuff. That's one of them. That's still,
yeah. And it's something that all first responders and
we always have
obviously military folks or whatever. You got to do something about it. Even if you don't think. I know plenty of people who've always had the attitude of it doesn't bother me. It doesn't bother me. And I used to have that same attitude, right? It didn't bother me, but eventually you're only human for so long, right? You can only be human. And yeah, something's going to get you. And, I just implore and hope that people really heed the warning and take care of yourself. You owe it to yourself to do it too. That's the other thing is you owe it to yourself.
Talk to somebody to release that pressure slowly instead of the one day when it finally just pops.
Yeah.
It pops. And never good.
Don't, what's funny is, I've heard people say, well, I'm going to therapy for my family, but great, but do it for yourself first.
Yep.
You have to, because you just have to take care of yourself. You owe it to yourself. You've done too much to not take care of yourself. And part of the problem with first respond is a lot of us are very much of the mindset of like, well, I don't deserve that, or I don't need that. I don't.
Me being brought up in the system I was, you do not go to the ER. You do not go in the ambulance. You are the rescuer. You don't do that.
Right. You don't talk about it.
No. Even when I was in the hospital, I was like, I don't belong here. I should be out of here. The doctor's like, why? I'm like, I'm an EMT. You do not go to the hospital. And he's just looking at me like, you're an idiot.
Yeah. No, it's just.
I had smoke inhalation and passed out behind the burn building on training. And my one captain's like, do you want me to tell the rest of the guys you're a pussy? Get your fucking ass up and get moving. That's how it trained into me.
Well, and it's just, that was the mindset back in the day. And that's what those guys were raised with too. It's not even like they weren't doing anything bad per se or wrong. They just didn't know any better. That's just how they were raised. That's literally how they were raised. And it's fortunate, and I'm glad for the younger people who've entered the field that they have more resources. And I hope I try to respond to that, and chat wouldn't let me. I hope that they take full advantage of it, because it's there for a reason.
There's been some improvement in the systems, and then there's some drawbacks in the system, but that's for another discussion.
Yeah. Well, we
can go hours. I got, let's see what time it is. Do we want to start this now, or just catch on to something small and after the break hit you with the big question?
It's up to you. It's your show, man. I'm just the boob on this side of the microphone.
Well, one of the things that you talked about on your show today, and how people are calming down.
Yes.
Now, I'm still not seeing that. I am still seeing the rhetoric, the fire, the fight. And
you had said that when I was in the air.
I don't want to see that. I want to have the conversations. Let's talk about our differences. Let's try to get to a common ground. But all the ones I'm coming across, they just still want to fight.
Big E, I'm trying to answer you from chat and it won't let me. So I apologize, because I had somebody very much in the same recently. Yeah, it's one of those things that it's not everywhere yet. It's not mainstream. And I'm not saying that we should cool off our agenda or pull back or all of a sudden start being too nice or whatever. Look, ball's in our court. We need to run with it. And that's the only way that we're going to maintain the ball after 2 years. If the Republicans squander this, it's going to go away, and who knows when it'll come back. Right. So
in the past,
I am 100% understanding and on board that we have to take care of the agenda and do everything that said that it was going to get done. That being said, and I think if the agenda goes well and they're successful, people will naturally come off of that. Citizens, regular people. The press is almost forced to come off it before that, because their numbers are so bad and they can't sustain. They can't sustain. Look,
even Fox is down, but MSNBC and CNN lost 50% of their viewers after the election. But Fox, even though they're leading, they're down.
That's why everyone's down, and that's natural too, right? You now have a election cycle that is 18 months long. People get beaten down. All the commercials, the text messages, all the times that the election is in your face, people are exhausted. So that doesn't mean that they tuned out pre-election, but as soon as they got the election was over, they had a chance. They're stepping away because they're like, all right, I need to clear my mind. You know what I mean? I need to get my head out of the election. I need to focus on other things in my life, so I'm not constantly amped up. That's the average person. So all of the numbers were naturally dropped. But CNN, MSNBC, they didn't have a dip. They are having their arses handed to them enormously, which is why Comcast is going to start selling off all of those brands. And they're splitting them off one by one, then they sell them all off individually. And
supposedly they've already split it off into a new company. They've already created a new company.
Yeah,
having a new CEO, all that.
And they're all short-term CEOs.
Yeah.
They're all people that know. And like I said, I hope upon hope that Elon writes the check.
Oh,
that would make me so happy. So happy.
Fox would be done with. Well,
No.
I mean, they'll still be around, but their ratings will drop drastically.
The only people I really see it hurting, honestly, are your news, which I'm not thrilled about, are your Newsmaxes and your Right Side Broadcasting. Smaller networks like that are up and coming, that have a good base, that have a good, do a good job. But if you had a mainstream true outlet, that could hurt them more than it's going to hurt Fox. Because I think people, I think people will go back and forth between Fox and X TV, whatever you want to call it. But I think on XTV you would get more of what you're seeing on Newsmax or Right Side, and both of those agencies do a good job. It's just it could hurt them. So it'll be interesting to see, but to see all of those insane leftists at MSLSD be out of a job or have to work for Elon,
that would be beautiful.
How many of them would eat crow and keep their phony baloney jobs and work for Elon would be amazing. All of that is the epitome of karma, wearing a giant steel boot and getting a running start and kicking them in the ass so hard the laces come out their mouth. It would just be miraculous.
All right, we're going to hit a break real quick. And when we come back, I got a big question for Sean.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
Are you looking for a way to boldly express your faith and love for your country? And check out Seven Armors, the premier apparel company for patriotic men of God, where faith meets freedom in style. Our t-shirts are more than just clothing, they're statements. Bold, stylish, and meaningful. From timeless messages to modern designs, we've got something for every patriotic man of God. Wear your beliefs proudly with Seven Armors gear. Don't miss the chance to wear your faith and freedom on your sleeve. Visit 7armors.com today and join the movement. That's the number 7armors.com.
Come listen to BZ's Berserk Bobcat Saloon Radio Show. Live on select and exclusive Tuesday and Thursday nights at 11 p.m. Eastern, 10 p.m. Central, and 8 p.m. Pacific on the SHR Media Rumble channel, SHR Media YouTube channel, X, Twitch, Spreaker, and wherever great conservative podcasts are found. BZ, your conservative Sherpa, guides you through the maelstrom of Democrat, leftist, and globalist lies, chaos, deceit, and betrayal. Raised as a free-range child with dirt, stains, mud, and freedom, BZ broadcasts from North Idaho, comfortably surrounded by actual normal people. Jump into our plush, sumptuous, palatial, and resplendent chat room on rumble.com. Click on live chat to join. Now, with 37% more umbrage and 19% more bulbosity than previous shows, featuring delicious Liberty additives for the best in late-night conservatarian talk radio. BZ reminds you that with great beard comes great responsibility. No chinchillas were harmed, embarrassed, fat-shamed, or the focus of any sarcasm whatsoever in the making of this ad.
Freedom. One nation in all of human history was built on that bedrock. Ours. A republic of the people, by the people, and for the people. Self-government requires freedom, just as freedom requires an individual willingness to self-govern. Freedom has made America exceptional, but it can only last as long as you and I seek the good, as expressed by the laws of nature and nature's God. It can only last if you and I choose to act as people of character. Forging character has been the pursuit of Hillsdale College since 1844.
And welcome back to the Reaver of Common Sense. I'm your host, Jersey Joe, and I'm here to make sense out of the senseless right here on SHR Media, conservative media, done right. One thing I do want to touch on is I am no longer on KLRN. I wish them the best. There's no hard feelings. It just didn't work out. There's still a positive partnership between SHR Media and KLRN. So that's why you may not have heard that. No issue, no nothing. I wish them the best. All right. You ready for your question?
I am. Before you do that.
All right, go ahead.
So Big E's in the chat room, and he sent me a 7 Armor shirt. Love it. Can't wait to wear it. But a lot of people don't know Big E and I used to work back in the day. If you have Big E on the show, ask him about the time we went on the call with the cop from Spain and the rainstorm. I'm not going to say anything else, but you have to ask him that question. Go with yours.
All right. So, we're going to start out with, did you read about, and I forget which nations it is, like 4 European nations have come together and said they will stop Trump from doing any peace talks between Ukraine and Russia.
Yep.
We should cut off funding immediately if they try doing that shit.
I don't understand. And I it's not that I don't understand what their angle is, because I do understand what their angle is. But to be stupid enough to say that outwardly, and look, you have NATO right now. The guy who's in charge of NATO, the head military advisor for NATO, essentially saying, hey, we may do an overt attack against Russia.
Okay, that goes into my second question then.
See? It's almost like I'm good at this. Go ahead. What's your next question?
Now, if NATO instigates an attack on Russia, are we obligated under NATO rules to get involved?
Article 5, no, because Article 5 was based off of mutual defense, and I think that there is a legal argument that we are not. I think that it is.
But I think what they're trying to do is a backdoor.
Right.
Oh, well,
and at that point,
I agree.
At that point, look, you have UK and France right now who are talking about putting boots on the ground in the Ukraine. You have France that just gave them long-range missiles. We gave them long-range missiles. It came out over the weekend that the Biden administration was considering giving them tactical nukes. Right? All of that charged. Huh?
If that is true, he should be charged with treason because he does not have the capability to do that.
Well, it was conversation about what I'm not saying that they were trying to do it underhandedly as much as they were still trying to eventually do it. I mean, if that meant that they had to present it and try to get, Congress to sign off on it. But the simple fact of the matter is the fact that they were even thinking about doing that is a problem, is a major, major problem. Whether you like it or you don't like it, there is a reason that part of the negotiation with the Ukraine was to remove troops because it is not nukes, because it was not a stable enough country, in our opinion. That was part of the reason. They gussy it up in a lot of ways as to like what Ukraine traded, blah, 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 blah. But a lot of that was because we were worried about them having nukes, and people, it's not a crazy theory. That's a reality. That was the thought at the time, because it was an unstable country. The Ukraine was an unstable country, still is, obviously. I mean, look,
and you've said it on your show. Now I'm going to say it on mine too. I don't like Russia. I don't like Putin.
Yeah,
but it doesn't mean I want to fucking go to a war with the son of a bitch. The man is crazy.
And even if he wasn't crazy, I mean, obviously he's insane. Even if he wasn't, I don't care. I still don't want to go to war with him.
Exactly.
And not over the Ukraine. Do I now, if the European countries want to get together and support Ukraine in defeating him, even with boots on the ground, as long as they don't try to invoke Article 5 of the Constitution, I don't care.
Yeah.
Right? Go for it. Go nuts.
I think do what they want.
I think they should have been doing it the entire time, if I'm being honest, because it was on their doorstep, not ours.
Exactly. And Ukraine is not a NATO country.
Right. And they were trying to make it a NATO country.
Well,
I
you
understand.
had Biden going, well, under Article 5, we have to defend Ukraine. No, we don't. They're not fucking on NATO.
Right. And there's a reason why they're not NATO. Now, who do we just add? Was it Finland and
Switzerland?
Yeah, maybe. But both of those, I understand adding them to NATO. Look,
Turkey is NATO.
Is NATO Turkey should be gone.
Yeah.
Is NATO a relevant body now per se? No. I know a lot of people don't want to hear that, but it's not. So we had NATO because of the Cold War, and we were afraid of the Soviet Union. And the reason why America was in NATO, they can say whatever they want once again, but we wanted to be able to get nukes right on Russia's border so we could throw it at them if they threw at us and get ahead of it, right? Yep. Contrary to popular belief, I know what Putin is trying to do, but the Soviet Union is not in existence right now. It is no longer the Soviet Union. Do they have that hypersonic missile that we saw the other day? Sure. If you follow anyone who's serious about it, is that the biggest threat to us? Not really.
No,
not really. I think Putin understands that it would be mutual destruction if he ever pulled the trigger. We know that. I think the last thing Putin wants in reality is any sort of an expanded conflict. But you have to understand who Putin is. Former KGB agent, right? Huge Soviet. Part of his job was destabilizing regions. Part of his job was propaganda. So when you look at a Vladimir Putin, he is going to throw off this strong man mentality to more a message to the people in his own country versus outside of his country. He could not handle it. He knows this now. Maybe he didn't know this going into the Ukraine. He himself cannot handle a sustained conflict with an organized modern military.
I don't think North Korea troops.
Well, I'll tell you right now, if Putin one-on-one wanted to invade, I'd say France. I literally just picked one out for the hell of it. He couldn't do it.
Oh, yeah, they would just surrender.
No.
Oh, no, that's just the Germans.
Historically, yes.
No,
but I'm just saying that France has a modern enough military.
Did you ever see the show, that 70s show?
Yes.
Did you see towards the end, Red was trying to sell his house, and he's talking to Kitty, his wife. And he's like, I'm not selling my house to Germans. And Kitty looks at him and goes, they're not Germans. They were French. He goes, yeah, and the first Germans that knocked on the door, they would give it to him.
Yeah. But I don't think that Putin's military could actually do that. Now, could they win an ICBM battle, non-nuclear, and some other stuff? Maybe. But there's a reason that they haven't been able to overtake Ukraine. They don't have the ability.
No.
They don't have the ability.
By a bunch of backyard warriors.
Yeah. I forget which one, and I'm sure the chat room will correct me. Whatever their modern version of their stealth fighter is, it's a Sukhoi something, I think, Sukhoi 50 or something like that. And it's supposed to be their most cutting edge, top of the line fighter, Gen 5, they're calling it. There was an air show in China 2 weeks ago where somebody took an up close picture of it because it was on display. It is not a stealth aircraft. You could see the gaps in the bodywork. You could see the holes. Well, holes are that throws out radar. That destroys the whole idea of stealth. When we work on our stealth aircrafts, there's a special tape that if you look at an American stealth aircraft, you'll see almost like a toothed saw line, if you will, around compartments and stuff like that. We've done tape, and then we've done work, and then we use this stealth tape to cover up the doors again to make sure that it does not give a radar return.
Who's that YouTuber? Habitual Offender, I think it is.
Habitual Line Crosser.
Yeah.
I'll tell you right now, he's a great person to follow.
Yeah.
For updated military history. He actually works he's in the army. His whole part is air defense.
Yeah.
So he knows this stuff inside and out. And there's also Alex Hollings. It depends on how you want to pronounce it. He's on TikTok. And he does a lot of aviation, military aviation stuff. Very intelligent, very educated. He's been doing it for years. He's gotten awards for his journalism with that. He's another great person to follow. He will point everything out to you. I don't think that Putin truly wants an expanded war beyond that. However, he does want to be a victim. Now, I don't think China showed its hand when it came to Ukraine at the very beginning, where he kind of pee-pee slapped Putin, right? She kind of was like, this is stupid. Because remember, he went to meet Xi at the Olympics thinking that he was going to get a whole bunch of support, and he ain't seeing China's troops in the Ukraine right now.
Nope.
Yeah, you're seeing the North Korean troops. You might see Iranian troops. I've heard that you're going to see they're a Yemeni, the Houthis, that are being conscripted through Russia to go fight in the Ukraine, right? That's not a threat.
The problem with the North Koreans, they're seeing freedom actually, and that Kim Jong-un is not a god, and
which is why I think there was a big hesitation with actually sending them outside the country to war. There is numerous reports that the biggest their problem, and I'm not making this up, folks, the biggest problem they're having with the North Korean troops is unfettered access to the internet, and they have discovered pornography. And apparently they cannot undiscover pornography. I'm not kidding. There's numerous reportings on this.
I just got the vision of American Dad Quagmire finding internet porn. He's got the real skinny arm, and then the other one's like
huge.
Down.
They can't get him out of the head, right? So I'm not really worried about that. Oh, it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. But you have to remember. And I was talking to this, and somebody else I was talking to about this, laughing. I'm like, you have to understand, these folks, this technology is brand new to them. This is like taking somebody out of the 70s and dropping them in 2024 and handing them a smartphone. Their minds are blown by this. Mm-hmm. It's insane to them. So
it's witchcraft, I tell you.
It is. So yeah, I mean, but you have to look at that. So North Korea is not providing them any sort of their fodder, their cannon fodder, which is the Russian military doctrine or war doctrine. Anyhow, they use their troops as fodder. Yeah. They just keep throwing waves after waves. They haven't changed that really. You saw it in the Afghanistan conflict. You've seen it in other places with Wagner Group essentially being nothing anymore. I mean, they're so super active in Africa. There's some still in the Ukrainian border, but they were at the very beginning, before they started conscripting the prisoners and everything, they were their more effective fighting force, because they were a lot of the higher end Spetsnaz and stuff like that guys who were like, well, I can leave my job in the military, still work in a military job, I get paid way more money. And it wasn't until they started getting hurt in the Ukraine numbers wise, and there was that whole thing with the former head of Wagner Group that got offed in the plane and all that other stuff, which it still goes to show you Putin's mindset. He is still a Soviet guy. He's still doing Soviet tactics. Instead of letting that guy kind of go free and then like using him to get intel out of, they blew him up because he was. But the reason that general, I can't think of his name, I'm sure there's a V in it somewhere. The reason why they killed him is because he realized that they were getting their asses kicked at the border. His guys were dying, and he was trying to lead a coup into Moscow. Yeah. When you're paramilitary company that you're supposed to give the best of the best of the best to turn around, they're like, hey, we're getting our asses kicked and we're not getting any of the stuff we're supposed to be getting, you get a problem. The lack of equipment, the lack of training, the lack of generals who can actually command a battlefield. The Russian army is a mess. It's a hot friggin' mess. And as I've said before, as much as I don't want to be involved in the Ukrainian war, as much as I don't want them having these long-range missiles, as much as I don't want American boots on the ground, I don't care what other countries do, because like I said, Article 5 is a defense clause and a defense pact. It has nothing to do with troops sending in advisors or other countries sending advisors, whatever. I still give the Ukrainian military itself a ton of credit.
Oh, yeah.
Because those guys, they were understaffed. They're a young nation with young generals or young commanders. They didn't have the best of equipment. It got better quickly, but
yeah,
and
but
they didn't.
A bunch of street fighters were defending cities, and by street fighters, I mean just everyday residents that were given arms. And
my favorite was the old Ukrainian tractor pulling the Russian tank down the street that they took.
Yeah,
that was my favorite thing. That was the funniest thing to see, because it was just some Ukrainian dude, Vlad, on a tractor, hammered, right, pulling this, T-72 tank down the street that they just, kicked Russia's ass and took the tank, and now it's on parade, right? I give those guys a ton of credit, those folks, because
do you know what that proves?
Huh?
Do you know what that proves?
What?
How many times have we heard here? Oh, you couldn't fight against the U.S. We got the military. We got this. You citizens wouldn't last 5 minutes.
Yeah. Biden, we have F-16s. Yeah. Well, see how many of those will last. But and see
how
if you
won't take off because the pilots won't fly them.
That's my point. Is good luck getting the pilots to attack American troops. But no, that's 100% valid point. It shows that you can take. I mean, but our military is far more advanced than the Russian military. Just I don't think the vast majority of our military would take that first step. I think they would walk away, or they legitimately would stage some sort of coup.
I do want to touch on another subject because it's getting almost that time.
Okay.
And I don't think he touched on it in your show because I don't think this broke. Jack Smith has put in to dismiss it, and the judge, from what I heard, has dismissed it.
Yeah. So I actually did touch this on my show, but the reality of the situation is it proves that was a political prosecution and not a criminal prosecution. That's all that proves. And
they're going to hide the left that are going, well, he didn't throw it out permanently. And once Trump gets out, he can reopen it up.
Jack Smith's done, because he won't be able to, because he's not going to be a special prosecutor anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah, we knew this. And I'll tell you right now, this case was going to get tossed anyhow based on the SCOTUS ruling on the immunity case. There's no way it wasn't going to get tossed. And it should have been tossed. This was a BS. Look, Jack Smith, and I said this on my show, he was a lousy prosecutor originally. He was junk. His success rate with his cases were garbage. I think they were sub 40% for success.
Yeah, he's gotten overturned how many times by the Supreme Court?
Ton.
And then cases.
The International Court at The Hague, right? Which we all know that's a joke. Yeah. The Hague is The Hague is the UN of courts. They say a lot of stuff. They do resolutions. They make decisions. They issue warrants, but there's no teeth to it. Why? Because sovereign nations are going to be like, screw you, right? I mean, right? They issued a warrant for Netanyahu. Good luck with that. But they sent him over there as a political appointment. Hey, you're going to get paid a whole bunch of money, and you're going to be able to live at The Hague, and we're going to pay for everything, and you get to like just live your best European life that you want. So it was never real. Jack Smith was a terrible choice. Mm-hmm. If you really want to go through, like, if they really, and I think that's why he got chosen, is because he was political and he would do what they wanted. There were plenty of other people out there who
I don't think they knew they couldn't win the case at all.
That's why they picked Jack Smith.
Damage. Yeah.
That's why they picked Jack Smith, because he would do exactly what he was told. Because if you had a real prosecutor in there, and let me get to the end before you cut me off. If you had a real prosecutor in there, and that real prosecutor saw actual evidence, well, they would actually go after people. But the problem you get into is discovery. And what doors does that open in other places for those eyes of that court to get into? Right? Mm-hmm. And that's the last thing they want. I mean, look, we all know by the way they're freaking out about Doge and a bunch of other things, the last thing the Democrats want is anyone to really look into the government. Right? So if you got a real prosecutor who was doing their job to do their job without malice, it could have broke a lot of other things. because the election interference stuff. Well, what does that get into? Well, now all of a sudden you get a discovery. You can start talking about the Hunter laptop. You can start talking about a lot of things.
Yep.
You can go all the way back to when Trump's, even as the prosecutor, right, all of that stuff. So we knew it was a political BS case. I knew it was going to get dropped. Look, New York did. I know right now it's on a freeze, but New York's going to get dropped.
Yeah,
because they know that
that's on appeal also. And
no, the criminal part isn't. The civil part is on the appeal. Right. The civil case where they were trying to take his building and all that other stuff. That part's on appeal. But if the criminal case is based very much on the same ideology as that civil case and the same kind of framework, where a lot of it was very exaggerated to make the law work, even though it wasn't. They made things up. They kind of expanded things. As you saw with the civil case, when you have a judge say, hey, look, you all don't have to agree on all of it as long as you all agree on some of it, you've never seen that ever. So they knew it was going to get kicked out.
Not even name a felony. Oh, whatever felony you want to think he's guilty of, hey, go ahead.
Well, the other thing is, if this case the conviction went through, it would immediately be appealed. And now the appeals court could put in, and now you're starting to look at wrongful prosecution.
Yep.
And, it's bad enough the civil trial, Letitia James' office, they're talking about censuring them, which is, if you're a lawyer or prosecutor, it doesn't matter. If you're being censured by any state court, you done fucked up, Ron. Yep. Like, it's bad. You have to really, really make some humongous errors, forced or unintentional, to get censured. And them talking about censuring them says everything you really need to know. They're more worried about getting censured now than they are about the case getting tossed, and the case is going to get tossed.
Yeah.
So,
and the last one is Georgia, and that one's so in shambles.
Georgia can't do anything because of that SCOTUS ruling. It's all the same stuff. Look, we knew all of these cases were being brought, and all of them were magically brought, and including the E. Jean Carroll case. All of them were amazingly brought after Trump announced he was running again.
Yep. No, it's not political. Not political at all.
Oh,
you're running again? Get him.
Yep. That's exactly what it was. I love
these people are just brain dead.
Well,
just
they were doing it. They were doing anything they could to hold the narrative, right? To hold on to that power. But look you just had the CBS poll come out last 3 days. Voters under 30 are at a 65% approval of the Trump transition.
Yep.
Higher than Obama was in 2008.
I'm tired of hearing about the FBI background checks too, because if you look, Obama didn't do them.
And the people don't realize this. The U.S. government has a whole bunch of contracted companies approved to do top secret background investigations that they use all the time for other people. So it would not be unprecedented, as they're trying to say. No, you had a DOJ that was going after me for the last 2 years, nonstop, that covered up the Hunter Biden laptop, that same FBI. And even though Christopher Wray is a Trump appointee, it doesn't mean that the people down below are not. We saw.
I don't trust Wray.
I don't trust Chris Wray either, but I'm just saying that's what one of their first statements is, well, Wray was a Trump appointee. Okay. But you also had Strzok and Page and people like that. And look, when they're saying reports of so many people in the FBI are going to resign if Trump gets elected because they're afraid that he's going to come after them. Right.
Self-cleaning.
Right. Why would you resign if you did nothing wrong? Look,
why are they hiring criminal attorneys?
Yes. If I was an agent at the FBI right now, and I've done nothing wrong for the last 4 years, even if I had to work cases that I didn't agree with, if they were legit cases, they're legit cases, right? Anyone who's ever worked law enforcement will tell you that there are plenty of arrests that you've made because it was legal, but that doesn't necessarily mean you liked it. But there's some that you're forced to do, right? I mean, that's just how it is. Same thing with the FBI. If you're a good FBI agent, in other words, you were given a case and you found their evidence to be a crime and you investigated it appropriately, and then the arrest was made and they were prosecuted appropriately, you have nothing to worry about. Nothing to worry about. But the word appropriate is what's important there.
Yep.
Now, you start making things up, or you start exaggerating stuff, or you start omitting evidence or adding evidence or any of that stuff.
You mean like the
animal?
reports?
Then all of a sudden you start hiring a criminal lawyer. It's weird how that happens. People tell you who they are eventually. They show you who they are eventually.
But I love how they think it's a threat, and we're going to go, oh, no, don't quit. We elected this man on the promise that he was going to clean up the DOJ. He was going to clean up the government. Because, other agencies, if this one is the head of it, I'm resigning. Okay.
All right, have fun.
We don't have to pay unemployment now.
Yeah, look, I said years ago, and I still say this, disband the FBI. Disband the FBI. You can send their jobs or their responsibilities to other agencies. The U.S. Marshal Service could take over 80% of the FBI tomorrow. You could have the Treasury Service take over the bank robberies. Most people don't realize if there's a bank robbery that's an FDIC-approved bank, that the FBI, it's mandatory that they arrive and lead an investigation. Most people don't know that. But
did I ever tell you that story?
Yes.
Okay.
10 or 12 times over the years. But the trade-off to that is they do it because it's the federal currency being taken. That's why they're doing it. Well, the U.S. Treasury is in charge of federal currency. Why that ever became the FBI's job blows my mind. And that doesn't mean that you can't take the good FBI agents and reissue them to other agencies, right? I'll tell you right now, the U.S. Marshal Service is an incredible agency. They do good work. I know there are people like, this, that, they're always going to find things. There's always going to be things. But by and large, the other thing about the Marshal Service is it's constitutionally recognized.
Sure.
So they were the original Secret Service. They were the Marshals were originally the ones who were protecting the president back in the day.
The problem is that with the whole DOJ as a whole, it's not that I have a problem with the DOJ or FBI. It's the infiltration of politics.
Yeah.
And I don't want it Republican influence. I don't want it Democrat influence. I want them fucking neutral.
Justice is supposed to be blind.
Yeah.
And that's why I said, I see a lot of people like, blah, 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 blah. We need to go after everybody. Go after everybody. Go after everybody. As long as they've done something wrong, I'm fine with that. But let's not go after everyone to go after everybody. Don't be them.
Yeah, exactly. I only want to go after the ones that have committed crimes.
Right.
If they haven't committed a crime, if they mouthed off, yeah.
If they've done
mouthed off or something, but
if they've done something illegal, yeah, perp walk them. I'd love to see it. I'll flip them off. I'll be the first one to see it. But if it's just a dude who's a decent FBI agent who just did his job and kept his head down or whatever, you don't go after that guy to go after that guy or that gal. You know what I mean? Yep. We can be on the attack per se, but still be on the right side of history and still be morally correct. Look, we all know there's plenty in there to go after. So go after them. I'm also a big, disband the ATF. You don't need them.
Yep.
You don't need the ATF. I'll tell you right now, the ATF back in the day, the ATF was worried about trafficking firearms into the country, and they were worried about trafficking gangs, specifically the motorcycle gangs, but gangs trafficking firearms. That was their focus. It wasn't until the 80s did they start getting into sawed-off shotguns in Ruby Ridge, and then you start getting into Texas, and they started going to places that they shouldn't have been. You know what I mean? The Branch Davidian complex, they're going after for the rifles. Like they should not have been the lead federal agency on that, because both Ruby Ridge and neither one of them, the ATF was the lead, but that wasn't the reason they were trying to get inside. The reason they're trying to get inside is, Ruby Ridge, it was the white supremacists and all of that stuff. When you look at the Branch Davidians, it was the child trafficking, child endangerment. you know, there was some not some coup stuff. There was some sedition stuff going on, whatever. It needed to be dealt with. Don't get me wrong, but it didn't need to be burnt down. All those people didn't need to die, right? The ATF was irresponsible.
Yep.
To a criminal level.
Here's the thing, that does not mean that we are anti-law enforcement, because I get tired of that. I thought you didn't want to defund police. No,
I don't.
I want our law enforcement to act like law enforcement and not, you know.
They held to be. Look, I'll tell you right now, they are supposed to be held to the highest standard.
Exactly.
And they need to be held to the highest standard, because what it does, and I said this when I was working in law enforcement, what happens is it erodes the good people in law enforcement when you have bad law enforcement. Now, does that mean that the cop who tells somebody to go pound sand and is a little rude as a traffic stop, is that a bad cop? No, that's not what I'm not talking about that person at all. I'm talking about an agency whose entire job is to undermine the Second Amendment versus protect the nation from foreign weapons coming in illegally, which is what they were supposed to really be doing.
And what
they were supposed to be keeping guns out of. They were supposed to really be keeping guns out of organized crime. Like, that was why the ATF was more or less created, right? Alcohol, tobacco. Well, nobody's worried about tobacco stamps anymore. Nobody cares about tobacco stamps anymore. They're not, you know, we're not bootlegging them across the country with tobacco stamps. Does it still happen? I'm sure it does still happen. Does anyone give a flying fuck about it? No.
Yep.
No, maybe some state agricultural agency does, but federally,
I'm probably I might get some shit for this, but I don't think making your own alcohol at home for personal use.
And there was actually just a case on this where all that's probably going to get tossed.
I would hope.
Even if let's say, even if it doesn't get tossed, we don't need an agency, because they were never going after alcohol. Back in the day, it was bootleggers, right? You ever saw Smokey and the Bandit, you know what bootlegging was. That's the stuff. Right. Well, no. Getting it across state lines when it was east of the Mississippi, west of the Mississippi, whatever, north to south. That's what the alcohol portion of the ATF was involved in, right? Is making sure that there was no bootlegging. We don't have those laws anymore. You can bring Coors east of the Mississippi and you're not going to go to the jail with Bandit and the Snowman. Like, that doesn't occur anymore. So there's no need for them to be doing that. So it brings you down to firearms. Right. Yep. And I'll tell you, I worked with ATF agents back in the day that were awesome, because they were focused on was actual bad people, motorcycle gangs, foreign gangs, street gangs. They were actually wanted to keep the violence down by stopping those people from having it. They didn't give a shit about the average person walking down the street. That wasn't their deal. Now they're subverting the Second Amendment every chance they get by making up rules, which it'll be interesting to see how the Chevron case applies to all of those administrative rules. But they've inserted themselves as a sidestep of the Second Amendment. And that's a problem. That's
definitions in the law to fit their narrative, so that they
no need for them anymore. We have no need for the ATF anymore.
What about under Obama with them running guns?
Yeah, gun walking.
I know one of the agents that was involved in that, and he said his job was, you get a phone call, go pick the van up, drive it out to here, drop it off.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, no, drop it off, they'll pick it up and they'll take it. We're not tracking device. Nope, no tracking devices. He got to the point where he actually resigned. He was like, I'm not dealing with that.
Led to the death of a federal agent.
Yeah,
it led to the death of a federal agent. Look,
was it one of those guns involved in a mass shooting in the United States?
Probably.
I know it was
off the top of my head.
Paris.
Off the top of my head. Yeah, it could have been.
Remember the big shooting at that theater?
The Bataclan Theater?
I think so.
Paris? It might have been. Yeah, I'm not 100%, so I'm not going to say no. I'm not going to say yeah, but even still, it cost a federal agent its life. We were walking weapons into Mexico that were being untracked, right? None of that should have been happening. The ATF doesn't need to exist anymore. It just doesn't.
No.
You want to deal with illegal firearms trafficking from out of the nation coming into the nation. You want to talk about, keeping guns out of, the 1%er gangs who shouldn't possess them because they're selling them in mass, et cetera, et cetera. You have the U.S. Marshals.
Yeah.
And believe me, they can handle it. And if you have your good UC agents, you have your good agents in the DEA who are doing it, or the ATF that are doing it for the right reason, you can bring them over the Marshals. That's fine. But you get rid of that whole command staff because they're just they haven't done anything. They haven't done anything positive for Americans. Look, the ATF should be like, if you want to keep them around as a non-law enforcement agency, they can teach gun safety classes, right? I'm serious though.
Well, they're supposed to be also involved in the background checks and all that, and people lying on it. And how many people are actually charged when they get caught lying on their background?
Well, nobody's ever looked into it. Look at Hunter Biden.
Yeah.
You know, everyone knew who Hunter Biden was when he filled that out. And I'll tell you right now, if you've ever worked with Dross or CGIS or any of those things, they will flag certain people where if like, hey, you run this person, same thing with CGIS and Kletz and all the other ones, NCIC. If you run certain names, somebody's getting a phone call. I will tell you that right now, because I've seen it happen. Where if you run the wrong person, a flag goes up and all of a sudden the phone's ring. It's like, hey, why'd you guys run Joe Blow? Well, Joe Blow did X, Y, and Z. Oh.
What about the illegal immigrant that just did a shooting and they're trying to figure out how he bought guns legally because he failed a couple of the background checks because he's illegal, but then he started lying on the forms.
Right. Yeah. And look, if he's not in the country, then that's not a problem. You know what I mean? I don't want to be expanded. The problem is we don't need to be expanding background checks past what they already are. But that
was my point. It's just the failures that happen all over the place, and that these
for the rules that are in place, they want to expand them, and they can't even keep up with the ones they have.
That's my point. Thank you. I know sometimes I take the long way around to it, but that's exactly my point.
But that's problematic. So ATF, we can agree that needs to go.
Yep.
FBI, like I said, you can suss out all those different portions, and you can keep some in a lot non-law enforcement agents entity if you want to do like an intel division where they do all the computer processing, whatever. That's fine. You want to make a federal, because the big one is, well, they do a lot of crime scene technology and crime scene work, I should say, for local agencies. Great. They could just be a professional evidence collection and processing service. That's fine. You can do that on a federal level. But yeah, well, I think Homeland Security should take a flying leap too. But that's neither here nor there. Again, I know good people
over that job.
I know good people over at Homeland Security, but Homeland Security, everything under DHS right now, including FEMA, is a hot mess and needs to be completely looked at. Look, I mean, there's still people living in tents in North Carolina, right? But
hell, you got people that are living in tents and now they're getting their children taken away from them.
Yeah, because they're living in tents,
waiting on temporary housing to be placed in their land.
That isn't done because I mean, we can go down. That's a whole show in itself. Yeah, it's an atrocity.
Which, speaking of, it's about that time.
Oh, it's past that time.
Yeah. You know how it goes once you get going.
And that's my short list of federal agencies we can do without. Could join us next week when we talk about the IRS.
Oh, flat tax, baby. Flat tax. There's no reason not.
No income tax.
I have no problem even with a flat tax.
Consumption tax.
But that's kind of a minor discussion that could be worked out.
Oh, simply, yeah. No, I agree with you. Look, there's flat tax, not fair tax.
Document for tax documents or tax law.
Yeah, it's that big. Look, I've said this before. The flat tax and fair tax are two different things. People get them conflated. Fair tax is what people think is fair. Flat tax means, look, this is our percentage. It's not changing. This is what you pay. At the beginning of the year, depending on how much. And I'm okay with that. I don't mind paying for services that we need. Nope. But let's let Doge work for a year and get rid of the services we don't need, and then we'll have that conversation.
That's going to be a big fight I see going.
But I'm all for just getting rid of the income tax because it was started as a temporary tax anyhow to help after World War I. Yep. So I'm all right getting rid of it because we paid for everything before that.
All right, everybody. That's going to be the show. I want to thank Sean. Tell us how everybody can find you.
Yeah, number 2, Against Tyranny on X. Every Monday and Friday on all the SHR media outlets. You can find me at 12 on the East Coast, 3 p.m. Nope, got that backwards. 12 on the West Coast, 3 p.m. Pacific. www.shrmedia.com.
All right. Thank you, Sean, for being here. Yeah, it's always great to have you here.
Pleasure, sir. Thank you for having me.
No problem. All right, everybody. Don't forget Monday, December 2nd, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on the right coast. 6 p.m. on the left coast. I will have Joel, I think it is. I'm bad with names. And I'll have a co-host with me, BZ. We'll be talking to Joe about his book and his time in the military. I will be here Friday, of course. Till then, have a great night.